Magdalene. Let's just be honest. If they were getting ready to build something here and they come across a synagogue, and you'd find it in, some archaeological journals. It would be of interest to the Antiquities Department of Israel, but there wouldn't be this. There wouldn't be all these pilgrims coming. This place is famous because it's Magdala, as in Mary of Magdala, or Mary Magdalene. It's Mary Magdalene that makes this. Otherwise, it's an obscure archaeological site that only people that have a particular interest in biblical archaeology or Israeli archaeology would pay any attention to. Mary Magdalene. She's mentioned 12 times in the Gospels. Other than Mary, the mother of Jesus, she is certainly the most significant woman in the New Testament, easily. We have a lot of misconceptions about her, though. So let's start with what we know. She's from here. She's from this town, from Magdala. She encounters Jesus. She has 7 demons, which is probably about average. And Jesus sets her free. He sets her free. Now, what do we know about her? Well, first of all, we know that she was wealthy. This is a rich woman. She is part of that cadre of Galilean women who are financially supporting Jesus and his mission and his disciples. Among that group is one wife of Chuza. And who was Chuza? Chuza was the steward of Herod, let's say it this way, the business manager of King Herod. So she's in a very elevated high class. That's her circle of friends. She's friends with the wife of Herod's business manager. She has enough money to help finance this mission of Jesus, this itinerant mission with 12 men traveling around preaching. She's financing that. She's part of those that finance it. Now, let's get this out of the way. She was not a prostitute. She wasn't a prostitute. A rich woman isn't a prostitute. That came about in 591 when Pope Gregory the Great conflated, for whatever reason, the unnamed woman who was a sinner in Luke 7 with Mary Magdalene. For no reason. But after that conflation was made, it's been almost impossible to pull it apart. But according to the text, there's just no reason to believe that. In fact, we just know that's not the case. She had some problems, 7 demons. Don't know what it was. She wasn't a prostitute. Then, as we move into the era of art, Mary is universally depicted as young and attractive. And occasionally you'll get little hints of maybe there's a little spark of romance between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Again, no evidence for that. You do get that in one of the Gnostic Gospels, but that's outside of our scope of inquiry. And that's 2nd century stuff anyway. I think she's a business owner, possibly a widow, probably middle age or older. She's not a young woman. Why do I think that? Because she was so massively important that we don't hear much about her after. I think she was already older by the time she meets Jesus and doesn't live that much longer. What we do know is that she became, hear me now, the most faithful follower of Jesus. The most faithful. She encounters Jesus here. Jesus heals her. She begins not only following him, but financing him. She is also following him around, but and some other women are paying for this. She follows him all the way to Jerusalem. She follows Jesus all the way to Golgotha and the crucifixion. The disciples don't. This is very confusing. John is at the cross. But this is probably not, wherever he is, John, son of Zebedee. The author of the fourth gospel, the disciple whom Jesus loved, presumably has the name of John, but is not to be confused with one of the 12. This John apparently is from Jerusalem, has high connections. He's personally known by the high priest. So this is different. But Mary Magdalene and the John the Evangelist were associated in much higher circles. Anyway, Mary Magdalene is at the crucifixion. She's there for the bitter end. She sees the death of the... She's even at the burial. I mean, what I'm saying is, once she started following Jesus, Galilee, Jerusalem, Golgotha, tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, she's always there. She never stops following. And then we pick up the story, John 20. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene, let's say it this way, Mary of Magdala, came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. She comes while it's still dark, early on Sunday, for her final act of devotion. One last time. She comes to pay homage, pay respect to the rabbi who had healed her. And she discovers that the stone, she had seen the stone rolled in place and put in place by Joseph of Arimathea, Nicodemus, and whoever else was assisting. And she arrives there, and the stone is rolled away. She doesn't proclaim, oh, it's Easter. She's alarmed, and she runs. She runs to where Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved, who I think is a young man, wealthy, connected to the high priestly family, probably living in the upper city near the house of Caiaphas. And she informs him of what she has found, and now they are running back. Everybody's running. And they run to the garden tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. They discover indeed the tomb is empty. And they don't quite know what to make of it. Mary continues to just, well, she's always there. So the disciple whom Jesus loved and Peter investigate. They don't quite reach a conclusion. They don't know what to make of this. The tomb's empty and they leave. Mary doesn't leave. She stays there. She's always there. This is the point about Mary. She's there. She's going to stay at the last place where she's seen Jesus. She looks in again at the tomb and she sees, well, it says two angels. She's distraught. She doesn't see this as necessarily good news. She may not even initially identify them as angels. She's not quite sure what's happening, but they are sitting at the head and at the feet of where Jesus had lain. It's the mercy seat. It's the cherubim on either side. She sees that, but she doesn't know what to make of it. And she turns around and, oh, there's the gardener. Because this is a garden. Jesus was buried in a garden. And she sees the gardener. She says, well, the gardener speaks to him and says, woman, why are you weeping? And she says, well, I can't find him. They've taken him away. Sir, if you have taken him away, maybe the gardener decided that this wasn't the appropriate burial place for someone that had been condemned, and crucified. Sir, if you've taken him away, she says to the gardener, tell me where you've laid him and I'll take him away, because she's never going to leave him. And the gardener says, Mary. And then she sees Rabboni. And she realizes that the gardener is not the gardener, but it's the risen Lord. Except that he is the gardener. We say that she made a mistake. She didn't make a mistake. Jesus was buried in a garden. You know, it all went wrong in the garden. Now we're back to the garden. And Jesus was sown as a seed in a garden. On the third day, the seed was raised in the garden as a gardener, which was the first vocation of humanity to begin with, but the first Adam failed in that task of nurturing the world into goodness. But this last Adam, this new Adam, will not fail in the task. This gardener. She begins to cling to him. And he says, don't cling to me. And then he makes allusion to his impending ascension. One of the reasons we've come all the way here to the Holy Land is because it's the site of the historical Jesus. The Jesus of Nazareth who walked these hills. And we want to investigate, and we want that to support our faith. And that's a worthy endeavor. But understand this, you can never fully reach the historical Jesus. I mean, we can drive the bus till kingdom come, and we'll never find Jesus of history walking these hills again in dusty sandals. Eventually, that Jesus has to be let go of. The Jesus we can encounter is the same one that is available to all of us, the same one that Saul of Tarsus encountered on the Damascus Road, the risen Christ. That one is available to all of us. And that is the one that ultimately Mary Magdalene finally came to know and to serve. After her encounter with the risen Christ, though, she was given a task, a commission, a vocation. Go tell my disciples that I'm risen and I'll see them in Galilee. And she goes. And the first preacher of the gospel, was a woman, Mary Magdalene. And so we give her the title, Apostle to the Apostles. Apostle to the Apostles. Mary Magdalene. I close my little presentation with one of my all-time favorite quotes. This is from G.K. Chesterton and his wonderful book, The Everlasting Man. On the third day, the friends of Christ, coming at daybreak to the place, found the grave empty and the stone rolled away. In varying ways, they realized the new wonder. The world had died in the night. What they were looking at was the first day of a new creation, with a new heaven and a new earth. And in a semblance of a gardener, God walked again in the garden, not in the cool of the evening, but in the dawn. Amen. Amen. Mary Magdalene, apostle to the apostles. So for those still holding on to some sort of idea that women can't preach the gospel. Well, Mary Magdalene's the apostle to the apostles. Well, I'll say it this way, the apostle of the apostles. Amen? Mm-hmm. So let's, we need to get to a baptism site here pretty quick. But we have some time to dash downstairs.